Welcome to Nasdaq TradeTalks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. We're coming to you live from Consensus in Austin, Texas. And joining me for this segment, we have Matt Ballensweig, head of Go Network at BitGo, and we're here to discuss what the Ethereum ETF approval signals to the market and the shift in tone that we're seeing out of Washington, D.C. as it relates to the digital asset space. Matt, it's great to have you with us in person.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Jill, in person.
You got it. And you know, let's talk about the Ethereum ETF approval. I feel like it was a bit unexpected or came earlier than expected. What does that signal to the marketplace?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say from the institutional crypto perspective, this was a total shocker to see how fast things progressed as it pertains to the ETH ETF approval. It was not priced in at all.
Right.
And when you just think about the pace of the Bitcoin ETF as like a similar proxy, no one would have thought that within a matter of days, right, would the SEC tell the ETF issuers for ETH to amend their 19B4 filings and say, ready these for an expedited approval. So seeing that happen live time, right, seeing the price of ETH trade up from 3,000 flat to 3,700 basically overnight, caught everybody off sides. It was really, a pretty interesting thing to watch go down live time. And it's not just the ETH ETF approval that matters here. I think like there's clearly this intentional shift, I think, coming from this current administration in Congress to, as we move into the election, really show support for digital assets and the crypto industry at large. So we saw SOB 121 basically get repealed the other day, and that will now go to the president, and we'll see if he vetoes that or not. But then also the FIT21 bill, or Financial Innovation Technology Bill of the 21st century, get passed with overwhelming support from both Republicans and Democrats the other week. So to me, like, this is clearly an intentional shift by the administration to say, we're going to be supporters of this, we're going to be on the right side of history here and move things forward. And it really feels like now both the Democratic and Republican sides are aiming to endorse crypto almost as a way to win more votes going into the election. But
that's the whole thing. That's that younger voting base, right? And you have the candidates talking about it. So it is a national issue that's going to be on the ballot. But I think even more concrete than that, I mean, you and I are sitting right now behind us is a Money Reimagined stage, and all day long they're having their crypto policy summit.
Yep.
The panel that just came off was discussing digital assets in the Supreme Court.
Yep.
Right? When we first started covering this in 2018, I mean that's a lot of progress. So even for Consensus and other Web3 conferences we've been covering, it feels very capital markets focused this year.
Totally.
And you're talking about framework, and you're talking about regulation, and this is kind of what's needed for. I don't think the Bitcoin ETF was the solution for everything, but the framework and the capital market interest is the catalyst.
For sure. I mean, if you think about just some of the major headwinds that has defined crypto over the last 3 to 5 years, it's always been regulatory clarity and support in the United States. And that's always been the gating item to institutional adoption of the asset class. So now within the matter of like this year, really, we have both a Bitcoin ETF and a looming ETH ETF approval. So there's going to be major implications to the market now that both of these are approved and through the door.
What are some thematics that you're watching in this space?
Yeah, I think really the thematics here are what the actual asset flows are going to look like now that this ETH ETF is approved, and then what will be the trickle-down effects from it. So the way I think about this is like, BTC ETF was phase one. It got people talking about, okay, what does it mean to have a non-sovereign, decentralized, internet-based, immutable digital currency as a store of value? Now that the ETH ETF is approved, the same big institutions, whether it's pensions, endowments, sovereigns, they're going to say, okay, does it make sense for to have a mandate to add ETH as an investment to our portfolio, as an asset to our beta? And they're going to have to really go down the rabbit hole a little bit further here than just Bitcoin. They're going to have to assess things like, what is smart contract programmability as a topic? Like, what are decentralized exchanges? What is speed and consensus? And how do we think about all those things? So to me, like, the thematic here is Pandora's box is open now for not only Bitcoin, but for DeFi as a whole. And that's going to do wonders, I think, not only for capital inflows into ETH as an asset, but for some of these other alternative L1s as well. So I'm looking at things like, okay, what's next on the docket? Is it Solana? Is it some of the other L1s out there like Aptos or Sui? And how is the kind of knowledge spread of these new institutions going down this rabbit hole going to impact kind of capital and information flows coming into the ecosystem?
Yeah. I mean, even if you think about it, if you want to bring some TradFi into this conversation, when you're allocating to the digital asset space, if you're thinking about it purely from the technology and the infrastructure, I mean, it can almost be part of like your tech portfolio allocation if you want to think a little bit outside the box.
It's a great point that you made. Like, Bitcoin, right? People think about it as a store of value. ETH and Solana and these other things, they're almost like call options on tech in a sense.
Right.
And so from an investment or an investability perspective, they can fulfill different things, right? It's not just a commodity. It could be an asset that really has, some of the volatility of a tech stock, for example, with high beta. So I think people are going to look at these assets in different ways now that this, ETH ETF has been approved, and there'll be just a lot more knowledge share. And I think, minds focused around kind of what this ecosystem is all about.
All right, Matt, appreciate the insight as always.
Thanks
for
so much.
joining us on Trade Talks. And thanks for joining me from Consensus. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.